Just a disclaimer, the opinions expressed in this podcast are our own views and views of our guests. Nothing in this podcast is to be taken as legal advice.
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalised AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, and welcome to That's Just Criminal with me, Annabel Cresswell, and my co-host,
Sumudu, Thode.
Today in the studio, we have a guest who I don't think needs much of an introduction. If you don't know who Steve Braunias is, you are illiterate. He's written many of New Zealand's best-known books, has been a journalist in the mainstream for an enormous number of years. So I think I'll introduce him by telling you what I found out about him today. First of all, the man does not drive. We had to send him an Uber. The journalist does not own a laptop. We've had to lend him a laptop. And his drink of choice, I was expecting to have to bring in some fancy red wines.
Or a whiskey.
Or a whiskey. Lion Red is what Steve Braunias drinks. Steve, welcome to the studio. Would you like to comment on any of that?
Thank you for having me onto the show.
Steve, what are you working on at the moment?
I really wanted to avoid going back to criminal court for quite some time. I wasn't really feeling that much when I was there the last couple of times. And you want to be alert for these things and you want to be emotionally engaged.
Why were you not feeling stuff in the criminal courts?
You've got to care, you've got to care what you're writing about and who you're writing about. And particularly after Polkinghorne, which was a fantastic experience, one of my, it's a career highlight, but it was really exhausting. I didn't have a lot in the tank after that. There was a case that a murder trial that I reported on towards the end of last year, and that was a real revelation. I absolutely loved that. That was Natalie Walker's last trial as Crown Prosecutor.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I found her astonishing.
Oh, really?
Which murder trial was that?
They're all sad, aren't they? You guys know that. But it was the terribly sad one of the woman who had killed her two children and then zipped them up into suitcases and put them in a storage locker.
So that trial had you feeling things?
Oh my gosh, yeah, from the outset. The actions were so baffling. And I absolutely love the way Natalie ran the prosecution, which sort of came out mostly, I suppose, in her cross-examination. You kind of get used to an aggressive kind of cross-exam, something scathing and disbelieving and scornful. And here was Mary Poppins with a kind of a bonnet and an umbrella floating above the courtroom, being terribly sweet and kind, and at the same time, eviscerating. I thought she was really first class, and I believe she's gone upstairs, isn't she? She's on the bench now.
She has
recently
risen above us all. She's out of this now, these grimy little courtrooms. She's a fancy lady now. She's a fancy Mary Poppins. Well, I'm delighted by that because you've just given us an in real life description of a trial lawyer, and we were wondering how you came up with them, the way that you describe trial lawyers in your books. Did you just come up with that now about Natalie?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I look at you guys intently. I think about you guys a lot. Yeah. When I'm in court.
Well, what I said last year to the Criminal Bar Association was, even though our job is debilitating, highly stressful,
soul destroying,
to journalists, defense lawyers are like rock stars. And then I read out a number of your quotes. Are we like rock stars to you?
No, you're not. I have no idea why you would say that, Annabel.
Damn it, see, one question too many there, Annabel.
What are we then to you? Why are you so fascinated by trial lawyers?
Well, I'm fascinated by trials, and I've definitely come to admire and respect the officers of the court, as I guess you were known. Over the years, I have generally kind of swung in some ways, like a pendulum, where my sympathy and respect goes far more towards people on the defence, and I find prosecutors generally more cynical.
But not Mary Poppins.
Not Mary Poppins, no. But yeah, so it's a sort of a generalization, but when I sort of think of prosecutors as a genre, I often think you're just doing a gig. And with defense lawyers, I often think this means something to you and you're being a sincere and proper advocate.
Well, I agree.
I
And
think,
some
yeah, I agree.
And the more defense lawyers who go upstairs to become judges, the better, I say.
they have almost always retained that compassion. And so the big difference, Steve, you'll know this, but as most of us have done a bit of both sides, I still do a bit of prosecuting and defending. And the thing about prosecuting, you've got a police officer doing most of the work for you, and you're just presenting the facts and let the jury make up their own mind. When you're defending, you have a client, and that's the biggest thing. And you're so caught up in their world and their life and their feelings, and you're fighting so hard for that person. There's so much more emotion in it.
We have those relationships for a long time as well. It's not like you just meet the client the morning of trial. These are people
Yes.
that you've got to know over months or even years, and not just them, their families, their parents, their kids, their whole story. So it personifies them in a way that reading a file the officer in charge is given to you as a prosecutor just can't do. So it's interesting that you can see the feelings that come out in the defense work.
I mentioned that Korean, she was a Korean woman, the one who was found guilty and never denied it properly that she killed her two children. And the relationship she had with her defense lawyer, which was the great Lorraine Smith, was actually quite moving and quite beautiful. About a week after she was found guilty, I was talking to Lorraine and said, "Oh, what are you up to today?" She said, "I'm going off to prison to give her some literature, a Bible or two, things of that nature, something nourishing." And I thought, well, the trial's over. You don't have to do that, I wouldn't have thought. And I thought that was a typical sort of gesture of Lorraine, who does have beautiful relationships with many of her clients, but that's not true of all defense lawyers. I mean, I adore Ron, right? I absolutely adore Ron Mansfield. And I often wondered about his relationship with Polkinghorne. You know, curiously, they looked alike.
They are
That was a
identical twins, correct?
I mean, all bald men look alike. We know that. Ron is quite reserved. Ron is quite thoughtful. And Polkinghorne, of course, is the opposite of those things. He's wildly expressive. He wants to get to know you. He wants to chat. He's funny. So these two would not be like natural friends. You know, you could never imagine them hanging out before the charges, say. It wasn't a beautiful relationship, but by God, he works so hard. The intensity of each cross-examination was something to behold. And we were chatting, while the jury were out, and he was a wreck, he was just gone. He was drained. He had nothing more to give. He was so tired, so devastated by what it took. And I think I describe in the book that I thought it was Ron's masterpiece. And I wouldn't be so sort of garish as to say no one else could have got that verdict. Certainly other people could have, but I think he was the best lawyer in town for that particular trial and all its lurid manifestations.
Ron is the master, I think. I don't think there's anyone that compares to him. And I would say, as a master of the craft, he probably adapts his client care for the person. Because if Polkinghorne was someone that was really dominant and doing all the talking, Ron, I imagine, would adapt to just listening and knowing how to handle him. I remember learning from Ron at an early age, like the jury are always watching, and you treat your client with respect. You treat your client in front of the jury like someone that you think is worthy of respect. The jury see that and they're subconsciously not thinking, oh, well, if this fancy advocate loves his client, then so do I.
Do you think that works?
That's interesting because a few weeks after Polkinghorne finished, I bumped into a bunch of, I would say, 60 to 70-year-old women standing at the front of court. And a security guard was saying, can I help you? And they said, we're looking for Ron Mansfield. And the security guards were saying, what case are you involved in? And they said, no, we just come to court to watch Ron. Polkinghorne had made him so famous, he got this like older woman
posse.
kind of fan club that just retired women, that their day is let's go watch Ron. I'm not aware that people hated him.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, there were court watchers who came every day to Polkinghorne.
Yeah.
And they came there out of fascination, but their attitudes evolved during the trial. And it evolved towards a detestation of Ron and Polkinghorne, almost as a postscript. And, since the trial finished, they've sort of remained in touch. They meet up quite regularly. I think they're called the Polky Group or something.
Oh,
There are 8 or 9 of them.
right.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just more he was the face of Polkinghorne and the trial, as opposed to it being something about Ron personally? Because, I mean, Ron is a very likable person.
Oh, yeah, he's adorable. I really like him. He's terrific over a drink and that sort of thing. But no, when he's in action, particularly cross-examining, he's a cold little fish, isn't he? The Polkinghorne trial and what made it stand out from every other trial that I've ever, attended, reported, was its irresistible comedy. It's the last thing you expect, isn't it? It's a dreadful thing. It belonged to the genre, certainly from the prosecution and police point of view, of, violence against women, man kills woman, all of that. It's not funny, it's dreadful. And yet it was played out largely by the prosecution as this kind of tabloid, lurid farce. And they were the ones who presented it as such. And then, of course, there was this figure of this compelling, strange figure of Polky himself.
But see, the thing with Polky is, I think most people hated him, right?
Yeah, sure.
And most people thought that he was guilty based on the way that it was reported, and I suppose a lot of prejudice thrown in there. But there must have been something else. I mean, the way that Annabel and I look at stuff's different because we can read an article, but we kick into defense lawyer mode, right?
Good on you. Yeah.
But the general public's different. Everybody that I spoke to who wasn't a lawyer was convinced that Polky was guilty and that would be the verdict.
What did you think?
I vaguely remember the day that the defense elected, he didn't give evidence, the day that our first podcast came out. And our first podcast was about the election to give evidence or not to give evidence. And I remember quite a few people messaging Annabel and I going, oh, is this a timing thing? Did you guys release your first episode on the day that Polkinghorne elected not to give evidence? And we had no idea, obviously, whether he was going to give evidence or not. And it wasn't anything to do with Polkinghorne.
I gather it was a close run thing. I gather that it was pretty much up to the day or the day before that it was decided he would not. This is what I gather.
Why do you gather that? Did you talk to Ron?
By talking to Ron and Phil, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a great issue about whether you elect to give evidence. And Ron has told me that he, as a kind of a rule, he prefers it with his clients. And I have seen him defend, trials where, there was one particular guy I thought, oh my God, he's not going to put him off. And he did. And the guy was just terrific. He was behind this sort of presentation of him as a drug-addled piece of shit. He was sincere, he was articulate, he was broken, he was vulnerable. And I think it went a long way to getting this really unlikely not guilty verdict in that trial. But yeah, I think with Phil, you just couldn't because it would have been back to the prosecution putting up their circus tent, bringing in the clowns, and asking him repeatedly about hookers.
Yeah. So on the point about Ron and being hated, what do you think is being an advocate versus public opinion? How much do you think advocates like Ron worry or should worry about public opinion of them?
Close to zero, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone who I've met and thought was worth their salt never really thought about it, never really felt it, didn't let it get in the way of their job. Their job, your job, is so hard in so many profound ways that I think public opinion is down the lower ends of difficulty. What do you think?
What do you think? Oh no, we asked the questions. What do you think is misunderstood about the role that trial counsel play in these trials, these kind of high-end trials?
Just the basic sort of visceral misunderstanding. How could you defend someone who's obviously guilty? You know, so not a lot of sort of thought goes into it. A lot of anger goes into it. Um, it's not an intellectual equation, really.
Do you think the media have a part to play in that?
Yeah, they've got a huge part to play in a lot of these things. I have been reading a new book of New Zealand non-fiction about crime, which raises, among its many issues, it looks into the media's reporting of criminal trials, in particular, the impact or influence the media have on politics, as in harsher sentences, tough on crime, and is saying that the media have an undue influence on that. It's a brilliant book. I think it's a revelation. I've not read anything like it. It's called The Valley. It's by a Wellington author and practicing lawyer. The author's name is Asher Emmanuel. I'm staggered by it. I'm almost speechless about it. I think this book is going to go off like a bomb. I really do. I think it
Oh.
should do anyway. I think it's amazing. To give you a very quick synopsis of it, he follows two men in the Hutt Valley, hence the book's called The Valley, who are facing multiple charges of pretty low-end offences, burglary and shoplifting. And he writes about their lives and their court appearances intimately, mainly through verbatim dialogue over a long period, I think about 18 months. And it's harrowing, funny, it's brilliant, and it has a powerful, meaningful message. The Valley by Asher
Oh.
Emmanuel.
Do you think it's in the public interest to report trials in the way that you do and write a whole book on them?
Is it in the public interest?
Mm.
No idea. It's never crossed my mind.
Why did you write a book on Polkinghorne?
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protege, your personalized AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz. Now, back to the episode.
I probably wanted to read a book on Polkinghorne and thought I'd like to be that person to write it. I wanted to read someone's attempt to make literature out of this case and this trial, and that's basically my motivation and my mission as a writer and a journalist, is that I try anyway to make literature.
Over the years, do you think you've learnt about trial reporting? Have you learnt any big lessons you could tell us about?
Some of it, or a lot of it, goes back to essential elements of good journalism, and that is when you're in court, it's a demand that you listen closely and hopefully intelligently. Courtrooms are boxes made out of language, and you've got to work really hard to follow that language. And it's particularly, formalized and peculiar language too, isn't it? It barely resembles English sometimes. Keeping an open mind, being sort of nice to people, you'll have the families of a victim and the families of the accused in the same room. So be nice to them and razz the lawyers as much as possible.
When did you start raising the lawyers?
Took a while actually. I was a very shy sort of person when I started this. The first one was the Dixon trial. That's Anthony Dixon, the man who owned a samurai sword. You might remember.
Yeah.
Simon Moore was prosecuting, and I remember in the first week he was a very dramatic prosecutor. And at his first week, he took the sword from the exhibit stand, stood in front of the jury, brandishing the sword, and enacted what Dixon had done to these two women by raising it above his head and bringing it down in this, terrifying motion. However, when he raised it above his head, and this is what I wrote about and razzed him in print, his shirt raised up too, and you could see this rather fat, hairy stomach, and I think the band of his Y fronts. So I wrote about that, and he was very good-humoured about it. He told me his wife was putting him on a diet, I think.
I'll take more notice of you being in court when I'm around now.
What do you think of court reporting and crime reporting that you don't do? What do you think?
Oh, really high standard, incredibly high standard of accuracy at vast speed. It's just one of the reasons I do the kinds of writing I do is that I'm unable to do what they do. And I realized that pretty early on as a journalist, that as a news reporter, I frankly wasn't very good. Oh, I'm better at writing things, yeah. It's taking obviously a lot of the same information, we're covering the same event, where they might be sort of seizing on a particular sort of, salacious angle. I will be seizing on Simon Moore's stomach.
Do you think it's more that you want to get more in depth into a file rather than sort of covering 20 cases in a week?
Yeah, if it's in depth, that would be good. It's patient anyway. It's patient and it tries to be thoughtful, and it tries also to be true to the spirit of these trials, which is to say, I could not have written that book on Polkinghorne without presenting it to a large degree as this unlikely comedy, as this spectacle, as this entertainment, because that was the way it was conducted and that was the spirit of it. I mean, I wrote 3 books which were collections of various trials, and they were all marked by certain things. There was the one which will, trouble me for a long, long, long time, and that was the Mark Lundy retrial and the way the guilty verdict was arrived. Hope not to see anything like that again, the way that the jury behaved to get that verdict. So yeah, the spirit or the tone of that trial, that in the way that I wrote about it, was probably, if there was one particular thing, it would be marked by disgust, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not saying that I think, I'm not adamant, or I'm not going to campaign for his innocence. However, the way that the trial was conducted, there was a really, really strong, evidence for reasonable doubt. And the way that the jury went about it was not based on evidence.
What do you know though? Or what do you know about how the jury went?
About the jury, because they were
Yeah.
doing it in front of everybody. Yeah, they were doing this weird maneuver between each other and whispering to each other at a particular crucial juncture. And you just sort of watched, white-faced while this was happening. It was really crook. Hey, in the long run, maybe it was an okay thing to do. Maybe this guy did, kill his wife, child, and however you reach a verdict is fine if that's what happened, and only God and Mark Lundy know, I guess. Most trials have one line, a zinger, a headline, and Phil Morgan's was, "A man should not wear his wife's brain on his shirt."
Yeah, that is
That's
a
pretty
zinger.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. When I was doing my extensive research today, I read that you never remember people's speeches unless they're Paddy Gower or I think Moana Jackson. There are a couple of others. But you obviously do remember trial lawyers' speeches.
And catchphrases.
Often, yeah.
So would you agree now that you think defense lawyers are like rock stars, or?
No.
I'm never going to get you to agree with.
We'll ask you again in 10 minutes. Hang on, let's keep talking and then we'll come back to it.
Okay.
As a breed or as a profession, it's one of the most important jobs in the country. I totally take my hat off. I admire it. I respect it. I just think it's, just amazing, the kinds of work that I have seen and the stamina that must take. I actually can't imagine what it's like to endure doing that kind of work. I can only really imagine my own job and the challenges of coming up with a good sentence. Those relationships that you have with people, all that kind of thing. This is far beyond what I do.
Who was your favorite person in the Polky trial to chat to?
Phil,
And why? Okay, why?
Phil, and then Brian Dickey, who's kind of like a friend now, I hope. Really good guy. He's got such a lovely sort of quality about him, something which seems to be essentially really caring.
This is Brian Dickey.
Yeah, you saying that with some surprise?
No. Because I want to know what you liked about Polkinghorne himself. What did you like about him? We all know Brian Dickey's wonderful. We don't know much
Um,
about him.
Phil, he's expressive. He's an individual. He was determined to do things his way. Certainly up until the night of that Easter when Pauline died, he essentially hadn't really harmed anybody or was not being accused of harming absolutely anybody. He was kind of running his own life as he wished in a very extremely busy way. And it was like, he cared not for public opinion. He was kind of like the last free man in the country. He's roaring around town making these sort of appointments with sex workers. It's this highly visible car. He wasn't traveling incognito. He did not do discreet. And there's something sort of admirable about it. And yeah, the last free man in New Zealand. And indeed, that was the verdict, wasn't it? Go forth and be the last
Yeah.
free man in New Zealand. You're a free man.
Did you
You know,
feel any did you relate to him or feel a kind of camaraderie with him at all? Or did you,
no, we had virtually nothing in common, actually. Um, we wouldn't have been, friends beforehand or anything.
you're not a free man the way he is?
God, no, I'm a good boy. But I liked him, and I mean, I've been waiting for the whole duration of this podcast for you to say, well, Steve, do you think he did it?
Do you think he did it, Steve?
I don't know. I would be really disappointed if he had. I'd be so disappointed
In what?
that
In Justice or in Ron or in Phil?
And Phil?
and Phil, yeah, I'd be like disgusted. I'd be so disappointed. And it's certainly possible. The great sort of reduction of that case is common sense tells you that Phil killed his wife. The evidence tells you a complete other story. The evidence tells you that you can only reach a verdict of not guilty.
Isn't there enough evidence, really, if you wanted to find that he was guilty, though?
No. It's sorely lacking, and Alicia McClintock did her closing address, and it was a really good address too. Terrific. She said at one point, okay, there's been a bit of talk from the defence about the forensic evidence. Let's just put that to one side. And I thought, well, you just can't. You can't skate around that. There's nothing anyone could do with it. There's nothing the jury could do with it other than deliver their verdict. So it was common sense v. the facts.
Can you just summarise why you think Polkinghorne was not guilty? Give us the highlights.
Sure, yeah, easy as hell. I mean, the prosecution called a number of witnesses, and at the end of it, you thought, well, what did that add up to? And then the defence called very few witnesses, most memorably 2 forensic pathologists. And they said, oh, well, crikey, if we had examined Pauline, there is no way on God's earth we would have come up with a conclusion that this was homicide. And they both said it. They were both very convincing, plausible, charming guys who did not prevaricate and did not stumble or anything when they were cross-examined. In the face of their evidence and the way that they gave it, there was not guilty.
How much do you think the whole Madison Ashton sub-story drama just play into that?
It didn't develop at all, did it? She didn't appear as a witness, so...
No, but in the media, she played a huge part.
She's played a huge part since the trial. She was expected...
But even during the trial, is she going to come? Is she not going to come? And then it plays into this whole, his lifestyle, which had nothing to do with the evidence whatsoever. But how much do you think that played into it?
I think it would have been the same verdict. She wasn't there on the night Pauline died. She could not contribute any forensic evidence. She went to motive, she went to various things like that. I thought it was a really good jury. They listened, they took huge amounts of notes, and you were picking up, I think, anyway, an active dislike for the accused via Ron. They were probably really reluctant to come up with that verdict. It becomes like a cliche, don't you think? So many trials I've been to, the defense lawyer will say in his summing up, in his closing address, now you may not like my client. He may or she may have done this or that, but we're not here to judge. You go, yeah, heard it 1,000 times before.
But the jury might not have. It's probably the first time they're on a jury.
It's a good thing to remind people, and I'm sure Ron would have said that of Polky, you may not like the way he's run his private life. Put it aside. What's it got to do with the death of Pauline Hannah? And it may actually have had everything to do with it, and the only person who could have crossed that bridge, as far as being the witness goes, was Madison, who will have her say at the
coroner's inquest. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
She's determined to come. She says she'll come. I'm sure she'll be there, and she's going to tell her truth.
Well, we'll look forward to that. We'll get you back on after, and you can give us that. Thank you very much, Steve Braunias, for coming into the studio and meeting with us. It's been very insightful talking to you, and I feel like we're not done. We could go on, but we need to go home and get some sleep.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure meeting you both.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Nice people.
Sumudu, I found that extremely insightful, but we didn't even get half of the questions I'd like to ask Steve Braunias. I think we need to get him back on one of these days. What do you think?
I think we do. We only really covered one trial.
I don't think he wanted to talk about Polkinghorne, and yet that's where we ended up. The listeners wanted Polkinghorne and they got a bit of Polkinghorne. All right. Well, I had a great time. I hope you did too. Let's sign off and have a wine.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you to LexisNexis for sponsoring us.
Thank you for listening this far. Today's episode is brought to you by LexisNexis. Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalized AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.